Hello and welcome to Georgia Bulldogs Live here on the Georgia Voice of College Football. I'm your host, Matt Green, my co-host over there, Bo Underwood. Bo, how you feeling tonight?
Feeling all right, man. We've got we've got a Steelers Texans playoff game on the docket, so that should be interesting. But coming off a fantastic weekend of NFL playoffs and an interesting semifinal weekend, I actually attended the Indiana Oregon game in Atlanta, and man, that was a blowout. Let me tell you, that was a beating. But yeah, it was a great 4 days of football, and hopefully we get another good one tonight. The portal's been going crazy too.
That's awesome that you were able to be in the building. I guess it would have been cooler if you got a better game. That was an absolute beatdown.
Yeah, man, Indiana's like the greatest team ever, dude. They look insane.
Yeah, they really did. Was it like 90% Indiana fans
Oh
there?
yeah, I mean there were like three or four. There was like one group of Oregon fans in my section, but like literally I think saying it was 10% Oregon fans might be kind of generous to Oregon. It might have been more 7% Oregon fans because, man, Indiana took that place over. I mean, I've never seen anything like it. And also, like, the seats in Mercedes Benz Stadium are red anyway. So, like, the few seats that weren't occupied kind of looked like Indiana anyway. So, I guess that kind of helped. But, man, like, you could probably count each individual Oregon fan in each section if you wanted to. I mean, Indiana took it over.
Wow. Yeah, that's Mercedes-Benz Stadium has not been kind to the Oregon Ducks. I don't know
No.
if that Chick-fil-A kickoff game versus Georgia a
Yeah.
couple years ago. Is that the only other game they've played
I was
there?
thinking, I was like, because yeah, that's the other time I've seen Oregon play there. Because I went to that game too, and man, yeah, they have not had a fun time over there.
Yeah, I think that was what 49-3. What was this score? It was in it
I think it
56-20 or something. What was the
something
final?
like that. Yeah, it wound up 22 maybe because I think Oregon like went for two on a touchdown. But yeah, it was that first game was 49-3. I think this one was like God, they
Did
went
you
over.
did you stay for the end of this one?
We yeah we did actually because we wanted to watch the speech and everything.
That's
Um,
fair.
but yeah.
Yeah, I don't know how Indiana just became like this juggernaut in 2 years, man. It's the most unbelievable thing I've ever seen, like in the history of
Mhm.
college football. Like
Yeah.
just the different coaches that take different jobs because of what they're sealing it. Like I don't know. Maybe we can just throw all of that out now in the NIL transfer portal era that we're in of college football? That like any power four job has the ceiling of national championship. If Indiana can do
Yeah.
it, literally anyone can do it. This is the worst power four football program
Mm-hmm.
ever. Like minus maybe what Vanderbilt or something or Northwestern. I know has had their terrible years back in the day. Like I don't know. Indiana might be the worst ever.
They were the losingest program in the country before the year started. I remember that's been
Is
the
that
thing.
right?
Yeah, that's kind of been the thing I keep hearing about Indiana.
Gotcha.
But all their fans were telling me that at the game. They're like, "We were the most losing team ever, and now we're gonna go to the championship." Like, it was cool. Those fans were just so overjoyed to be there, and how could you not be? But yeah, it really. I mean, I don't mean to take anything away from Indiana because I feel like when we talk about them, we kind of turn it to this broader conversation about college football and how things are now, and for good reason. But like, not even like just the fact that Signetti got basically a bunch of transfers and turned them into this. I know that there's all this stuff about how the team is older or how their alumni they have. I think they have like the biggest alumni base in the country or one of them and everything, but even all those factors aside, it's still incredible when you see a team actually do it. And this Indiana team has been one of the probably biggest stories of college football this century, I would say. Right?
Yeah, because I mean, you just think about like the Clemson's drought to winning a championship or Georgia's drought to winning a championship. Like those were significant storylines. It had been like 40 years since Georgia won a championship. Like Indiana's never won anything. So this is just I don't know, it's crazy. It's also it makes you question even more so like obviously Ole Miss got to the Final Four without uh Lane Kiffin, but it makes you question even more. Like, if this guy can do this in Indiana, then what is the marginal difference between going from Ole Miss to LSU? And is that really worth blowing up everything to kind of get it to a marginally better school program? I don't know. Like it's a weird question. I think you have to ask in today's landscape.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right about if you're a Power Four school, the ceiling now is a national championship. And I mean, what Indiana did is really some NCAA 14 dynasty mode stuff. I mean, for them to just go on there and get this team and go on this run is pretty incredible. And yeah, it says a lot about where we're headed and everything, but I really don't mean to say that in a bad way about this team, because as much as I definitely do bemoan the state of college football and stuff, sometimes you do get cool things like this. And so I'm excited for the national championship. I mean, Indiana looks like one of the greatest teams we've ever seen. Obviously, we'll see how they actually look in the championship. This whole thing could be remembered entirely differently if they just go out there and get smoked by Miami, but I don't think they're going to get smoked by anybody. And yeah.
Yeah, and I'm neither one of us are sitting here knows 100% for a fact that they have not cheated. But the fact that like cheating is already being thrown out, that this team is so good that like people have 30 straight tweet threads about it. Yeah, I don't know. I'm not gonna even speculate about anything like that until we have some evidence. Right now, they just look like one of the best teams we've ever seen in college football. And that's another thing that I kind of, one of my predictions when this field expanded 12, I know there were some people out there like, well, no one's ever going undefeated again. It's like, well, no, that's not true at all. Like these dominant teams, 2019 LSU, like 2020 Alabama, yeah, they have to get by a couple more rounds. You think those teams still don't go undefeated? Like it might have gotten a little bit more difficult, but great teams are still going to be great teams. And yeah, it might be, just probability. It's a little bit less likely. You got to play a couple more games, but great teams can still, accomplish this kind of greatness. We just didn't expect it to be Indiana.
Yeah, no, we did not. Yeah, I know all the cheating stuff. People are throwing that out there. People are, I mean, this is what sports fans do. They're always going to want to take away from a moment. They're always going to want to hate on greatness while it's happening. So I'm going to choose not to do that and enjoy this Indiana team while it's happening right now. And if it comes out later that they're cheating or whatever, then we'll deal with that later. But right now, it's kind of awe-inspiring to watch the ascension, I guess, that this team has had. I mean, they went from literally the worst program in Power Four, and now they're in the national championship, and they look like complete juggernauts. They look like one of the best teams we've ever seen, and that's pretty incredible, no matter how you slice it.
It definitely is. And the other game, obviously, this past week was Miami and Ole Miss, and Miami won that one. Carson Beck getting to the national championship. But the SEC will be shut out of the national championship for the third straight year, sir. Do you think this is a crisis for the SEC? Is the SEC no longer the juggernaut conference that it once was? Is the SEC bias just that strong that 5 SEC teams got in? What are your thoughts, sir?
I think there's definitely been a leveling of the playing field just across the national landscape in general. And whenever that happens, whoever the dominant party is, conference, group, what have you, is going to just be less dominant. And that's what we're seeing. The SEC is, like without a doubt, not the same just, juggernaut conference from 10 years ago where you could say, oh, so-and-so wouldn't win anything in the SEC. Like, is it still a bloodbath? Sure. Yeah, there's a lot of really good teams in the SEC, and they ended up producing a bunch of playoff teams this year. But I really don't think we're at a point anymore where, you can look at the SEC title game and say, this is the real national championship. People used to do that. Like, I saw an interesting point too this week is people were talking about, well, the Big Ten generally has schools that are better academically than the SEC on average. I'm not saying every school is better than every school in the Big Ten and the SEC, but they tend to have more wealthy alumni who donate more to the schools. And we're seeing that with Indiana. They've got Mark Cuban in their alumni network. And we're like the SEC, obviously, like that's a big reason why Vanderbilt has gotten so good. It's because Vanderbilt has these really wealthy alumni who just have boatloads of cash, and they funnel it into the program. They got the number one quarterback in the country to commit last year or this year. They just won 10 games, which like no one ever thought that they would ever do.
They've also never reported like their earnings and things like that. So we don't actually know how much money Vanderbilt's been making all these years since they are a private school.
But yeah, I think there's definitely an academic element of it, of these SEC or these Big Ten schools that are a bit more prestigious and have wealthier alumni. It's paying dividends directly into the program. And the SEC, you know, no one takes football more seriously than the SEC. It just means more, all that and everything. But money matters more than it's ever mattered in college football. And the Big Ten, I think, is proof of that. So that's probably what I would say has contributed to the quote unquote fall of the SEC as like the dominant conference. But I also don't think that the SEC is like just this regular conference now where, you know, like I still think that it's really tough to win in. And I think it's obviously I'm a Georgia fan, so I'm like, it still means a lot to win the SEC.
Some would say it's even more important than the national championship.
Yeah, it's like it's way better. Like, you know, come on, like it's the toughest conference. But the SEC is clearly not the juggernaut Death Star conference that it once was. I think rumors of its demise have been a little bit overblown, but I see where people are coming from for sure.
So I agree with a lot of what you said, and I disagree with some of it as well. Like, two things can be true. Something can be overrated, and it can still be the best. Like, it could just, it's not head and shoulders the best, like maybe it once was, but it could still be the best. It was just a little overblown. I also think the point of kind of the talent being more dispersed, I think people are misinterpreting that point, that the talent is more dispersed, but it's also more dispersed around the SEC too. So I think also like the 13 straight national championships, whatever it was that the SEC had that they touted, it wasn't that many, 11 straight or something, however many straight national championships they had. I don't even think it was that many, actually. I think it was like 7. Now that I'm thinking, it was like whatever, 07 to like 2012 or something.
Yeah, that sounds
I
right.
can't remember. 03, I don't know.
Whenever Ohio State wasn't winning natties.
Yeah, Florida State, I think, ended the streak in 2013. But yeah, they had that streak of winning the national championships, and I think the rest of college football was like, oh, that's what makes you the best conference is winning the best. It's like, no, that was just kind of a trivial fact that existed along with the SEC dominance. But the championship streak was never the reason why the SEC was better than every other conference, in my opinion. It was just like, yeah, Alabama was insanely dominant. They would have been dominated whatever conference they were in. I think the SEC now, like 4 through 12, is significantly better than it was 5 years ago, 10 years ago. And I think the top of the SEC is no longer as dominant as it once was. That if you're one of the 2 or 3 at the top of the SEC, you're without a doubt one of the 2 or 3, 4 or 5 best teams in college football. That might still be the case some years, but it's just not, it's not like a guarantee like it was at all times. So like you look at the Big Ten this year, I mean, I'm going to sound like a hater here. Oregon got all the way to the Final Four by beating who this season? By beating Texas Tech? Like, we know Oregon's better than Texas Tech. Oregon really didn't play any other good teams the entire season. So sometimes the bracket, well, they didn't beat any other good teams. They played Indiana and they lost to them. I will say neither of us the whole season thought Indiana was this juggernaut that they clearly are. We just kind of were skeptical that like, they're good, but we did give them the respect because they beat Oregon. They beat Ohio State. Ohio State, on the other hand, didn't beat anybody but Texas. Oregon didn't beat anybody but Texas Tech. So I'm not just all of a sudden going to say the Big Ten is the juggernaut of college football because Indiana's this good. I will say the SEC's like biggest feather and they always had in their cap was that how many different schools they had that were capable of winning championships. So Indiana becomes a third different Big Ten school in 3 years to win a national championship. That's a pretty great feather in your cap to have. So the Big Ten is obviously, one of the 2 best conferences in college football. I just don't think the SEC being shut out of the national championship for the third straight year, to me, it's more of a trivial fact than it is that the conference is down. I think this conference is still loaded with 10 like contenders like every year. Also, Oklahoma and Texas joining this conference when they did, like that definitely adds to the depth of the conference. So I don't know. I'm just not like, we're gonna look at the NFL draft when it comes in May or whenever it is, and the SEC is gonna have the most players drafted again and all of that. I'm not convinced that the SEC is just overrated like some people are.
I agree that the SEC is definitely not as top heavy as it once was, and the mid tier and even bottom tier schools are probably better than they were about 10 years ago. And I also agree that like you don't have to say the SEC is not as good as it was is not to say that the Big Ten has like taken over that spot of the top conference. I just don't think there really is that like supreme conference anymore. But also,
Yeah,
like, let's not. To be fair to the SEC detractors, which I hate doing because they're annoying. Like the SEC was abysmal in bowl games this year. The SEC had a 4-10 record in bowl season.
yeah.
To not make the Natty is one thing, but like bowl season is kind of where those conference debates are really hashed out because that's when it's conference versus conference play. The SEC went 4-10. Dude, the ACC went 9-4. And I know that the ACC teams generally are not playing as teams that are as good as those SEC teams. But, like, my point remains, like, if the SEC really was still the best conference in college football, like, bar none, they would have a better record than that. And, that's a very simple argument, and I hate to just, like, throw this one number out and say, look, that makes the whole point. But I do think it speaks to a greater point that, like, the SEC just isn't going to be able to manhandle other schools the same way that maybe they were. I think that what's the long-lasting narrative been about the SEC is like the trenches are just different there. The lines of scrimmage are just different there. The man ball is just different. You can't line up like you sissy ACC Big Ten schools can't line up on the lines of scrimmage against the SEC team and win. I don't think that's as true. And that coupled with the fact that these 8 Big Ten programs generally have wealthier alumni, which helps a lot in this era, I think just kind of contributes to the overall decline. But I'm also not ready to sit here and say like, oh, the Big Ten is a much better conference because I don't think it is. I think they're about even. You could go either way.
Yeah, I think and that's fair. The points you made. I don't know. I just look at what the Big Ten and it's tough the bowl game point too because like the bowl games have such differing importance for every program and like players opting out. It's like it's hard to know how much to value those specific games. We also don't get the 5th Big Ten team versus the 5th SEC team and the 6th ACC team versus, sometimes you get the 3rd ACC team versus the 9th best SEC team. It's hard to say when it comes to that sort of thing. Maybe we should deep dive into that more and see like what the actual matchups were this year. But I don't know. It's just there's so much SEC hate out there that it's like they're jumping on their opportunity. But it's like, I don't know. To me, when I'm watching college football in the regular season, and we're obviously bigger SEC fans, but at the end of the day, I'm trying to watch the biggest college football game like at all times, regardless of what conference it's in. And all season, it was rarely anything outside of the SEC. Like the Big Ten, maybe it's a part of the product of like this conference now being 18 teams and you got like 3 or 4 games of like actual ranked Big Ten teams versus another ranked Big Ten team. But I don't know. It felt like that conference was so top heavy this year. Like outside of the top 3 or 4, I almost just didn't respect the whole rest of the conference. And I can't say you're the best conference in the country when I think at least 3/4, 2/3 of the conference just isn't really a real contender. And I don't know. Call me. Also, the other thing about the SEC is this idea that SEC bias, ESPN got 5 teams from the SEC in the playoff, as if the SEC wasn't loaded this year. And yes, all 5 teams have lost, but 2 of those lost to other SEC teams. So that was my biggest issue with these Oklahoma, Alabama, first round, Georgia, Ole Miss, second round. Like, let's if we're gonna have these conversations about conferences, let's at least prove it in the games that actually matter in the postseason.
Yeah, I agree with that. It's funny because it's the same thing that people use. It's the exact same argument that SEC fans use to defend the SEC in the regular season. Is other conferences, namely Big Ten fans, will be like, well, look at so and so. They're 7-5, and then the SEC fan goes, well, their 5 losses are all the other SEC teams. If they were in the Big Ten, they'd be 10-2. Like, I don't know.
Well, and then if your whole like premise is that, oh, this is like a deep state conspiracy, well, yeah, because the rankings are part of the conspiracy. So that, and it just feeds into, well, yeah, that's because they're all overrated. It's a self-fulfilling thing. Yeah, I don't know. The SEC's been the best conference. It's where the best players, best stadiums. It's got the best everything. It has for a while now. I don't know. I'll need more proof. I'm not just saying it will forever be the best conference, but I don't know. I think there's a definitely an argument that it hasn't been watered down, but like the talent is more evenly dispersed without its own conference. More so than like the talent is leaving the SEC. It's just the talent might be leaving Georgia and Alabama. You know what I mean? And it's like Georgia and Alabama and even LSU for a year. Like maybe they don't have as much talent as they once had, and some of these mid-tier or a little more SEC teams are a little more competitive.
And that's ultimately where I land with it on this whole SEC Big Ten supremacy debate, is that the way college football is set up now, there just aren't going to be those teams anymore, like 2021 Georgia, 2019 LSU, 2020 Alabama, so on and so forth, 2018 Clemson. Pick any Ohio State team from the Urban Meyer era almost. There just aren't going to be teams like that anymore, where you look at like the first 3 positions on the depth chart for most positions and you can see an NFL starter there on every single rung. And the fact that we're kind of getting away from those types of just juggernaut Death Star teams is going to disproportionately affect the SEC more than other conferences, because there just are more programs there that are like that, with Georgia, Alabama, and LSU. Whereas the Big Ten historically, like, yes, they've had great teams from other programs, but really the one program in the Big Ten that was turning out like just insane teams every year was Ohio State. So I think that metamorphosis, that homogenization of college football just more disproportionately affects the SEC. I still think that teams 1 through 16, the SEC is probably the strongest conference, but there's no denying the Big Ten is much more top heavy. I mean, they produced 2 of the 4 semifinal teams. They have the title favorite right now. So yeah, I think the idea of what a good conference has just shifted, because the way rosters are built has shifted. And so the fact that we don't have these like, oh my God, unbeatable teams, yeah, like I said, I think just more disproportionately affects the SEC and clouds the perception of it a bit more.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think prior to like 2020, it was basically a 1-team conference. And then Harbaugh had their years, and it was like, okay, now you got Ohio State and Michigan and Penn State's having their good seasons. But yeah, now Oregon, now Indiana, obviously. Yeah, I mean, I've talked ad nauseum about Penn State's 2024 season just being totally just fraudulent. They weren't that good. They got so bailed out by the bracket. But you look at the hard, cold facts. If you're counting the 4-team playoff along with the semifinals, but that's 5 different Big Ten teams that have played in the Final Four in the last 3 seasons. That's a pretty strong flex right there for the Big Ten.
Oh yeah, they've got that going for sure.
We got a comment here from Bebe Rich. Carson Beck is playing in the Natty. UGA is at home watching Beck. LOL.
LOL.
Well, Bebe.
LOL it up, man.
You're gonna find two of Georgia fans that I think aren't necessarily rooting against Carson Beck. So I will say I'm not as happy for him with Georgia sitting at home, but I've kind of fully I expected Carson Beck's 2025 season to be better than it's been, but I would have never predicted it ended up in the national championship game. So shout out to Beck and also Beck making plays with his legs. Since when? Since when does I don't know how many first downs he ran.
He could always scoot a little bit, man. He might not be a B runner even, but he's a C plus runner, and that goes a long way sometimes. Yeah, no, I think we've made it known on here multiple times that we do not hate Carson Beck. Obviously, yeah, it's a lot harder to be happy for him when Georgia got first rounded and he's out here in the Natty. But yeah, this is a pretty shocking run from Miami for me, just because I think I knew their defense was really good, and I mean everyone knew their defensive line is nuts. But I thought that Beck had a worse supporting cast this year than Cam Ward did last year, without Restrepo there and everything. And obviously last year Miami didn't make the national championship. They didn't even make the playoff. But, of course.
The defense was a lot worse last year.
Yeah, the defense was much worse. And Malachi Toney also just emerged as one of the best freshmen we've seen in college football in a very long time. But, yeah, I don't think it was I think Georgia fans who think Carson Beck was just some awful quarterback who couldn't win anything were just wrong. I mean, it didn't take a genius to watch Georgia's season last year and be like, wow, the run game is terrible. The receivers are terrible. The pass protection is terrible. There are not a lot of quarterbacks who would have succeeded in that environment. And, Georgia won the SEC last year. Carson Beck made some really nice plays, and he definitely is a quarterback that can elevate you in big moments. And he hasn't even been that eye-popping this year statistically. I kind of thought that, maybe he would. I mean, his stats are probably not as good as Ward's stats, but
no, definitely not.
Yeah, I mean, but we always knew that he was a really good pro-style quarterback who can hit some really high-level throws in the intermediate areas of the field. And sure enough, man, what's the secret in college football now? Go get you a 24-year-old quarterback and go to the Natty. Carson Beck can be that guy.
Yeah, for sure. And honestly, I feel like it just worked out for everybody. Maybe that's just too kumbaya. People don't like that. They want hot takes here. They want hate. But it's Gunner was better than Carson Beck basically all year. Gunner seemed to kind of fit Georgia's offense better. Beck kind of seems to fit Miami better. I think Georgia fans were done with Carson Beck. Okay, he went on. He's still good. Man, well, Toney, it was Toney, right? It would have been the greatest catch I've ever seen in my entire life in the fourth quarter of that Ole Miss game. But his foot came down out of bounds. That one-handed catch.
Was that Toney who caught that?
I was thinking it was, but now I'm questioning that I said it. But
yeah, I know it played. Yeah, that was crazy.
But yeah, I mean, congrats to Carson Beck. It's a very validating year for those who defended Mike Bobo and Carson Beck a year ago. That's all I'm gonna say. No joy comes of it from me since Georgia season ultimately didn't end where he wanted it to. But I feel very justified in my defense of Mike Bobo and Carson Beck this year.
Yeah, I do too, man. I mean, obviously Beck was not perfect for Georgia last year. He turned the ball over a lot. But I think it was just always short-sighted and in bad faith to attribute most of Georgia's offensive struggles to him last year. I think the only people doing that were the people who were just football is not a team sport. It's actually all the quarterback, and those people you can't talk about sports with those people. You just can't reason with them at all. But yeah, I mean, when Carson Beck is not and I'm trying to tread lightly here because I don't want to make people think I'm trashing the Georgia program or something, because I'm not. I know people get sick of when you make excuses for Carson Beck because he made a lot of money and has a Lamborghini and everything. I get all that. But he was in a pretty bad offensive environment last year with all the injuries to the offensive line, how ineffective the run game was, and how bad the receivers were. And you get him in a better environment. Wow, it turns out he's actually a pretty good quarterback. Who would have thunk it? So, yeah, I'm happy for Carson Beck, man. I mean, he was Georgia's quarterback for 2 years. You know, you don't just hate a guy like that. Something would have to go really bad. He'd have to do something horrible, and he hasn't. And that was a great game. They pulled it out against Ole Miss, and I think that this national championship should hopefully be a good one, man.
Yeah, let's hope we get a good game. Not definitely. I'm not 100% convinced we will, because Indiana looks like an absolute just unstoppable force, but we'll see. I guess that brings me to my next it kind of segues into our next thought here of the 2025 season. Was Georgia's 2025 season a failure? What say you, Bo Underwood?
Oh man. I'll come out and just say no, I don't think it is, because I just I know that I was over here kind of caping for the Big Ten people and saying the SEC is not the juggernaut dominant conference anymore, but I still kind of think it's the best conference, all things considered. And even if it's not the best conference, it's the second best conference by a little bit. And I just think any year that you win the SEC cannot be looked at as a failure. Think about, and I don't want to play the how many programs would have loved this year game, but really, I mean, like, winning your conference and getting a Sugar Bowl bid in a vacuum is a very successful season. Obviously, did it feel like this Georgia team left a lot more meat on the bone and really fell short of what we thought they would accomplish? Absolutely. I mean, that Sugar Bowl loss is one of the most deflating seasons, or one of the most deflating losses I think I've ever seen Georgia take, and certainly one of the most disappointing of the Kirby Smart era. But man, like, this new era of college football where, you know, it's a lot harder to win, you know, your rosters are generally just not going to be as strong relative to smaller programs. I mean, it's just a lot harder to tread water in Power Four conferences now, generally speaking. And so I think a conference title is just always a good thing. Obviously, like, I still felt like Georgia had a really bad loss to end the year, and I'm sure it's going to eat at Georgia fans forever, including myself. But if you're asking me a yes or no, black or white question, was this season a failure? I just don't feel comfortable with saying any year that includes an SEC title and a Sugar Bowl berth is a failure, even if we know that Sugar Bowl berth is really a thinly veiled first round exit.
Yeah, I think I'm on basically the same page with you. I think people just need to remember, like, preseason expectations, and it's like I don't think anyone ever remembers preseason expectations versus postseason finish, because like that seems very important. You know, if you're preseason the 15th ranked team and you finish ranked 9th, it's like, yeah, you probably had a better season than most people predicted. Like, I think we're kind of quick to forget that this is the year a lot of people were expecting like a Georgia fall off. Like, they're obviously still preseason top 10 and all that. Like, it's not Nolan Smith. No one's projecting us to go 7-5 or anything. But you look at the preseason, like, I was pulling up the preseason quarterback rankings. Gunnar Stockton was 10 on this CBS Sports. Like, a lot of people had him in the 12, 13, like one of the more unproven quarterbacks in the entire conference. I think by the end of it, I don't think he was first or second, or he may not even been third team All SEC, but he was, you know, top 5 quarterback in the conference. He finished 7th in the Heisman Trophy voting. So Gunnar clearly had a better year than anyone expected. Most people wanted Mike Bobo fired before the year started, but you know what else is new? He's a Broyles finalist this year. Like, and you, like, your point of saying, like, leaving meat on the bone, like, I don't know that I mean, obviously Georgia could have won that Ole Miss game the way it happened. Like, they could have won the game. Ole Miss could have won the game by more if they didn't drop some of the passes they did. You know, it's like they made mistakes as well. Georgia did not play a clean game. The whole meat on the bone thing, I feel like kind of like is along the same lines of a lot of people saying, like, oh, this team, they can flip the switch in the second half. And it's like, no, I don't think they were ever flipping the switch in the second half. They were just like a solid team that was like finding ways to win most of the season. And I'm afraid, I actually said this, I think, to you before the Ole Miss game, because I was trying to temper my expectations. I talked smack about Texas and Alabama as like being kind of overrated for most of the season. So then when Georgia blew out Texas, I was like, okay, I do think this team's overrated. So I try not to get too excited. They blow out Alabama. I did say this team was overrated. Try not to get too excited. I think that could be what those were now looking at it after 15 games. That Texas and Alabama were not great teams. Those are Georgia's two most dominant wins of the season, you know? And it's like they felt good, but it doesn't mean you're the best team in the country. It just means you're better than Texas and Alabama's, maybe significantly better than those teams. But if we're ranking the teams right now, neither of those are finishing top 10. So and then you look at the other thing. Let's see. I have this graphic to put on the screen here. A little blurry. I think it'll come.
Oh, there you go.
But this is the roster breakdown in the SEC this season. Georgia 64.3% freshmen and sophomores.
That's actually crazy.
Yeah, the third highest percentage in the SEC. So LSU
second highest percentage of freshmen in the SEC behind Tennessee.
Yeah, it's like, and so you're talking about the team that won the conference. Like that's kind of wild. LSU had just over 66% freshman and sophomore. Tennessee just over 64%, and then Georgia just over 64%, 64.8 to 64.3. Like Ole Miss, the team that got the furthest at 59%. Like Alabama's at 53% freshman sophomore. Obviously, Vanderbilt was like 35% freshman sophomore. They had 22% graduates on their roster this year. Like one of the oldest teams in college football, maybe the oldest team in college football.
Look at Vanderbilt versus everyone else. There's only two other teams even in double digits.
Yeah, I mean, just add those percentages at 46, 63%.
They've got more graduates than any two other teams combined in terms of percentages.
Yeah, that's insane right there. So yeah, juniors, seniors, and graduates is like 65% of Vanderbilt's roster. So Georgia is a team, and obviously Georgia doesn't compare themselves to Vanderbilt. Vanderbilt had a one good season, but yeah, I think that's the most encouraging sign about this. And we're going to get into, updates with the transfer portal and things like that. But Georgia's not losing a lot of contributors in the portal either. Like, so to see one of the youngest teams in the SEC, like Tennessee played like the youngest team in the SEC, right? Like you were good, and then you lost to all the actual really good teams you played, and they end up 8-5, I think, at the end of the season. Yeah. Or did they lose 5 regular season games?
I think they finished 7-6, didn't they?
Is that no? They couldn't have lost that many games, right? I got to pull up Tennessee real quick, because they lost to Georgia, Alabama.
Right. Yeah, okay, they went 8-5, including 4-4 in the SEC.
Okay, so 8-4, then lost the bowl game. Okay, lost to Vanderbilt, Oklahoma, Georgia, and Alabama. That was it.
Yes.
Okay. So, yeah, it's like that's a team, played a lot of close games. Obviously, played the team that won the SEC. You were a 40-yard field goal away from beating that team in September. So, like, Tennessee was one of those teams, played really well, but, just found ways to not win games. And that's probably what happens when you're a young team. So, for Georgia to be that young of a team and still get better and better as the season goes on and win the SEC, like, we're definitely disappointed that they lost in the Sugar Bowl, but yeah, I think if you're looking at what was the preseason ranking, like just the actual, this was the lowest preseason ranking I can remember of the Kirby Smart era. I was trying to pull it up here. Preseason, what were they, 7 or 8?
Georgia preseason.
Yeah,
I thought they were number 6.
AP's got them at 5. So maybe I'm just over here, Nolan Smith, 7-5, and us.
No one believed in us.
No one believed.
No one did.
But yeah, at 5, the second highest team in the SEC. Also, when people were so wrong about 3 of the top 4, put some respect on Georgia for just continuously being in the top 5, top 10 every single year. I guess top 5 more years than not. But
sorry.
But yeah, it's just that's why I can't call this season a failure. As bad as the final taste is in their mouths after this season, it's just with how unproven they were coming to the year. Like even like me and you talked all off season about it. How it's like this team doesn't have any guaranteed first rounders. on the in the 2026 draft at least. Like we're just used to having to just knowing, yeah, Michael Williams and Malachi Starks, those guys are first rounders. And then if a couple guys break out, then we could have a couple more first rounders. Like that's basically what Georgia's been for the last 5, 6, 7 years. And this year, it's like Dalen Everett. I don't know. Maybe it's like we didn't know who the first round. I think CJ Allen probably, or maybe, I don't know. He's even one of them. Zachariah Branch is I think right now the only guy we would maybe project going first round. I'm not even sure he goes first round because he's not like the prototype, height and weight and that type of stuff. But yeah, just so for what everything that goes into the total package, preseason predictions, all that kind of just the roster breakdown, I can't call this season a failure.
Yeah, I don't think I can either. Just like if in terms of like if you asked me on August 29th, like and then now, would you consider an SEC title and a quarterfinal playoff exit as a failure? I would say no, because there were just so many question marks about Georgia entering the year between Stockton and the all new receiving core and the defensive line being almost completely revamped aside from Christian Miller. Like there were a lot of question marks, and especially around the time of like after the Tennessee game and then especially after the Alabama game, I straight up just felt like, okay, like this is not a national title caliber team. They'd be lucky if they get in the playoffs. I think that would be a win for them and everything like that. But then around November, they really start to look like they've turned a corner. The defense starts playing a lot better. The pass rush starts showing signs of life, and Ellis Robinson, it becomes an elite player, and DeMello Jones emerges and everything. And in general, it just looked like that defense had really taken strides, and Georgia really looked like it was setting up to be able to dominate in the postseason and be one of the best teams in the country. They beat Alabama by 21 in the SEC title game and avenged their only regular season loss. So you're looking like, okay, like, man, we didn't think it during September, early October, but boy, howdy, Georgia's got a national title team again, And so to bank on all of that growth and to spend so much time, focusing on, I mean, you and I spent a lot of time covering that and talking about that, how much the in-year growth and progression from this defense especially had been, how impressive it was. So then to go out there and just allow 40 points or whatever, 39 points, and in a lot of ways look like the defense had kind of regressed to its early season form was very disheartening and disappointing from a Georgia fan perspective. So I understand why, with those raw emotions and just dealing with the immediate aftermath of the loss, you would say, yeah, that season was a failure because we really looked like we had a national title caliber team and we didn't even win a playoff game. But if you go back to, I think, September and the way that we felt about this team before the season, I think this season would be in line, if not a bit better than what our expectations were.
Yeah, I mean, if you told me this team, like you said, August 29th, that this team goes 12-2, wins the SEC, and loses in the quarterfinals of the playoffs, yeah, I'll probably take that. I thought this was like a rebuilding year, so I can't just completely recalibrate my expectations. Well, I should say we all did recalibrate our expectations. It's not fair for us to not hold like those preseason expectations to what the postseason outcome was. And postseason outcome was, yeah, I obviously preseason 5th. After the final rankings come out, they might be 5th. So you could say, oh, they did exactly what they were supposed to do. But I feel like this team was better than people thought they were going to be. I think there was a lot of people, and maybe it's just being that number one program in the SEC, like Bama was for so many years. Everyone just is so desperate for the fall off that they're just predicting it every year. But I mean, all you need to know, I mean, not all you need to know, but one big factor too, FanDuel's preseason win total for Georgia was 9.5. 9.5 for Georgia. Like, they haven't won 9 regular season games since year 1 of Kirby Smart. Like, it's double-digit regular season wins every single year. So that the fact that that number was at 9.5, other than the COVID year, that we'll throw that one out, but it was like a shortened year. Like that team, 2 losses, like
What even happened that year?
They would have been like an 11-2 team
Yeah, they
in the
probably
SEC on a normal season, you know?
Yeah,
just lose to Bama and Florida. But yeah, so the fact that the preseason win total was that low, that just kind of showed you like how the public was thinking about Georgia coming into this season. And for them to still win the SEC, Gunner to take the strides he did. Yeah, I'm gonna have to call it maybe not a success, but definitely not a failure. I guess if that's a you know, one or the other, you'd have to call it more of a success than a failure. But Georgia, obviously, their standard is national championships. But no, I'm definitely with you. This year was not a failure.
Yeah, I think because college football has changed so much now, and the top end teams aren't really what they used to be. It's just, I mean, it's just more of a crapshoot than it's probably ever been before in terms of the postseason is more of a dice roll than it's ever been, just because it's more teams, it's more rounds, and the rosters are generally more, say, leveled out than usual. There's generally more even talent distribution across both sides. And so as easy as it is for us Georgia fans or LSU fans or Alabama fans or Ohio State fans to be like, we're so-and-so. Our standard is win the national title. And if we don't do that, that's a failure. I get that. I get that from a competitive standpoint, and I get that from just a pure fan standpoint. But I also think you have to be realistic about the state of college football and just that, like, money matters now, man. You know, like that whole word Bama thing. Like Indiana just dropped a bag and they became Bama. You know, it's easier than ever before to get to that level. And so I don't think it's as much of a point of like, I get it, that program pride and the fact that we just saw Georgia win 2 national titles 3-4 years ago. But that 3-4 years ago is like decades ago in terms of how different the sport is now. And so I think that I'm not saying Georgia fans need to never expect to win a national title again or anything. And they definitely have their right to be upset about the way the season ended. Hell, I'm upset about the way the season ended. But I also think that we have to be more realistic about our expectations for any given season, just because it's harder than it's ever been to make a run.
Well, and what you're saying is like, it's factual. It's like, but like, I guess it's what do you do with that information? Like, if you want to say we're a program of this standard, if we don't win a championship, it's a failure. It's like, okay, that's fine. It's like the whole championship or bust conversation.
Yeah.
Like, if we don't win a championship, it's not a successful season. Like, that's fine. But it's like, what are you going to do? You're going to start firing people, or are you just going to say this year was a loss? It's like, yeah, this year is a failure if you want to call it that. But it doesn't mean it's a failure that you now have to just start changing everything. Oh, we're a failure. It's like Georgia's good, got a good OC. Georgia's got a good DC. They got one of the best head coaches in college football. This year did not end where they wanted to end, but they're going to come back and they're going to be as much of a contender as they are basically every year. And I think in the 12 team in the big dance format that college football is becoming, like college basketball, all you can really ask is that your team's in a position to win it every year, because who knows what's going to happen once the bracket shakes out the way it does.
Yeah, I pretty much agree with that, man.
I'm glad we can agree there. Meant to kind of start the show with this, but we'll kind of end with it. NFL draft declarations, I think, are essentially over now that Monroe Freeling has announced his intentions to forego his final season and go pro. So I think Freeling, Zachariah Brants, and CJ Allen, I think really the only 3 that were not seniors, right? That are going pro from this team. So getting Dalen Everett back, getting Christian Miller back, or Dalen Everett not back, as a senior. Christian Miller, Dalen Everett, Oscar Delp, those guys going pro and everything as well. But anything, I got to meet Monroe Freeling's mother during the Georgia-Florida tailgate this year. So that was a good time. Don't remember her name, but nice lady. Had a good chat with her. Should have asked her at the time if he was going pro. I should have got the inside information. But yeah, shout out to Monroe Freeling. He had, after the way 2024 ended, Monroe Freeling just had a monster 2025 season. So I think multiple SEC Lineman of the Week awards this year. Was he first team? I'm not sure that he was first team SEC by the end of the year, but I think Monroe Freeland's going to be a stud. Former 5-star. He'll make a lot of money at the next level.
Yeah, absolutely. I think he was second team All SEC this year, but
okay.
Yeah, Monroe Freeling is a guy who obviously we knew had all the tools. He was a 5-star offensive lineman committed to the University of Georgia, so that usually tells you something about a guy's physical abilities. But he did struggle for parts of last year. You know, Georgia was swapping out its tackles a lot. They were moving guys. Green played both sides of tackle last year. I believe they did the same thing with Freeling. And even if they didn't, in general, Georgia's offensive line last year was just chaotic and hampered with injuries, hampered with inconsistencies up and down play. And Freeling struggled with that about as much as anybody. You know, he had his great moments last season, and then he had his not so great moments. So he was a guy who I felt a little weird about going into the year this season. I was definitely cautiously optimistic about the year that he might have. And man, I mean, he really produced. As weird as Georgia's tackles were last year, as many pressures as they wound up allowing and everything, they were a strength of the team this year. Him and Green balled out, but and especially Freeling. I mean, he had a great year, and that's just not a hard. That's just not going to be an easy guy to replace at all, man. I mean, I know that Georgia's got guys on the roster right now that they feel good about. Maybe that's Michael Uini. Maybe that's even like Daniel Calhoun. Who knows? Who knows what'll happen there at that spot? Maybe they ask Gaston to play some right tackle. But either way, yeah, Monroe Freeling had a hell of a year. He was a guy who really needed it, and his draft stock, I think, entering this season was kind of up in the air, really dependent on the kind of year he had. Well, he had a great year, and he's probably going to be picked in the first 2 rounds of the draft, if not the first round. I mean, he's not what I would call a surefire first rounder, but if he did go in the first round, I don't think I would even bat an eye.
Yeah, he feels like a guaranteed like top 2 round guy, like top 50, 60 pick. I guess I shouldn't get ahead of myself because Ernest Green, I don't think has announced if he's coming back or going pro. So I think that might be the last one that George is kind of sweating as far as like a going pro decision. But as far as the transfer portal goes, there were some whispers out there about Chauncey Bowens, about Nate Frazier. Nate Frazier has announced he's coming back for 2026, and Bowens as well. So let me see here. I got a little tally here. Portal guys in and out. So this is what I have so far. So earlier today, Dante Dowdle from Kentucky, their second leading rusher this year, committed to Georgia. And then so add that to Khalil Barnes, the Clemson transfer, Amaris Williams out of Auburn, Isaiah Canyon for Georgia Tech, and then Jamarlee Riddle out of USC. But like I said, like I texted you at the time, Jamarlee Riddle, don't sleep on him. Every USC transfer Georgia gets.
Well, Jamarlee Riddle is from Eastern Carolina. The USC guy is
oh, you're right. You're right.
Braylon Conley.
Oh, you're right. I'm missing one. Good call.
But yes. Yeah, I like a lot of the guys that Georgia. I'm pretty excited about this portal class so far, man. I mean, a lot of the guys that I think Georgia's losing were all kind of expected to go. There wasn't any stunning transfer like last year with Damon Wilson, or even with like Carson Beck was not a stunning transfer, but it was a significant one. This year, the most significant Georgia transfer is Janelle Aguero, and that's a guy who got kind of replaced in the lineup by the end of the year. You know, I know he wasn't technically healthy in the Ole Miss game, but that might have been Dinkins in there anyway. I guess we'll never know. But yeah, they got a lot of guys who I'm pretty excited about. The number one thing that I'm probably looking forward to seeing, or number one guy that I'm looking forward to seeing, is Amaris Williams, just because Georgia didn't have much of a plan at edge rusher last offseason. I mean, I guess their plan was Damon Wilson, and then he transferred, and Georgia was kind of left to scramble, and they went out there and they got Ella Madozi out of Army, but Ella Madozi joined the team in May. I mean, I've said this on here multiple times, but like you've got no chance at contributing in a meaningful way if you're joining the defense that late. With how complicated Georgia's defense is too, especially like I just his Georgia career was set up to fail, and he wound up not having a great year. But that shouldn't be the problem with Williams. I mean, this is a former 5-star who is just a crazy athlete, plays with a lot of strength. Didn't have the most productive year at Auburn last year, but they're going to need him this year. I mean, they really are. Like, this is, I think Madozie was kind of seen as a guy who, due to the timing of his arrival and due to the fact that Georgia was just in so much need of help on the edge, Madozie, I think it was fair to look at as like, well, if this guy comes in and contributes anything, it'll be an absolute win. Anything that he does will just be a good thing. I don't think you can look at Williams like this. I think they need that guy to produce right away, and I think he's got an infinitely better chance of doing it than Madozie ever did.
In fairness, I think we were maybe unfairly assigning that same pressure to Madozie, maybe just out of desperation.
We were.
But yeah, I think that, and you're probably right. Being a post-spring transfer, just not an ideal situation. But yeah, most of the Georgia transfers to this point, I think, have announced their new have at least commitment. I don't know, you guys sign, they just commit. I don't know how the portal works, but Bo Hughley announcing Florida, Pierce Spurlin to Florida, Pierce Spurlin of Florida, Bo Hughley to Colorado. But yeah, still, this said, it was one of my end whatever we had our 2025 results shows. One of my more disappointing things of the 2025 season was the production from Georgia's transfers. I would say this year's portal basically shows how disappointing that was, with Adrian Maddox, Jaden Harris, and Elo Madozie, all three guys who were supposed to come in and contribute, and all three are one and dones, and they're heading somewhere else.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, just who do you think is the biggest loss from this outgoing portal list? Is it definitely Aguero? I think it's Hughley, because Hughley could have been the answer at tackle, filling in for Freeling, and now they've got to kind of pivot elsewhere for this.
Yeah, and that's probably, just more like we feel more like we know what Jonel Aguero is at this point, and it seems that Rashawn Dinkins, and maybe it was just injury, he lost his spot due to injury, but it seemed like Rashawn Dinkins kind of took that star spot. You also saw DeMello Jones in that star spot a little bit, so it kind of feels like Georgia surpassed Jonel Aguero. You know what I mean? It was like, okay, so, and then also, I mean, they've brought in Khalil Barnes, Riddle, and Conley. Like, they're bringing in defensive backs with experience, as well as how excited I think most Georgia fans pre-Ole Miss game were about Ellis Robinson and DeMello Jones. But yeah, I still feel, I'm really high on Georgia's corners going into next year, especially what they've done in the portal. So yeah, I just think this defensive back group's going to be a lot better. So maybe that's why I'm downplaying the Aguero loss. It feels like Hughley, maybe I'm looking at, star rankings and high school stuff, but it just feels like you always need that depth on the offensive line. You saw how many injuries Georgia was dealing with at times this year and last year, and Hughley was needed at times. So I would agree. I would say he's up there, and then same logic I would say applies to Jordan Thomas. That I don't know what he is yet, but definitely he's a depth piece in a spot that Georgia didn't seem to have great depth. So I don't know. Maybe that means they'll get better depth with someone like him leaving, but I don't know. We don't necessarily know what he is yet. And I think that's the most encouraging part from this portal. Nair Daniel is also just a huge human being. He was just a true freshman, right? Transferred.
Yeah.
Who knows what he can turn out to be.
For other reasons.
Yeah. Fair enough. So, he could turn out to be a player. But yeah, I think that's the most encouraging part of this team. We just talked about the percentage of this team that was freshmen and sophomores last year. And then you look at the portal, Jonel Aguero by far the biggest loss in terms of production in the 2025 season. and was not a guy who had like a great 2025 season by any means. No disrespect to Jonel Aguero, but that's just how little I think George is losing in terms of production in the transfer portal. And I think that's an encouraging sign.
Yeah. There hasn't been any transfer yet that I would sound the alarm about, like Damon Wilson. It looks like maybe we had a close call with Nate Frazier and Ohio State and all that, but he's cleared all that up. He's re-signed with the team and everything, so they're good there. And
Nate Frazier knows way too much about RBU.
Yeah, he
stuff with George. Like exactly. He couldn't have transferred.
He has talked openly with a lot of reverence about Nick Chubb and Todd Gurley and Sony Michel, and he's doing the early bow in the end zone. Like he clearly cares about being part of that tradition and everything. So yeah, it would have surprised me to see him leave. It would have sucked on so many levels because he's a great player. Seems like a good dude. He's a fan favorite. We're very glad to have Nate Frazier back. That's awesome. But yeah, I wanted to talk a little bit more about the DB thing because, Aguero, was Aguero shaky in coverage? Was he probably one of Georgia's lower end starters on defense? He kind of got picked on in coverage a lot. But he is still a starter and he still plays he plays star. That is one of the most important positions in Georgia's defense. It's one of the hardest ones to play. You've got to be good against the run. You've got to cover receivers. You've got to cover tight ends sometimes. It asks you to do a lot, and it takes a really unique type of athlete to play, which Aguero was. For all of Aguero's faults, the one thing you cannot say about the guy is that he is not just a grade A premium athlete. That guy is built to play nickel in the NFL, and he probably will one day. But anyway, Khalil Barnes was one of the more productive defensive backs that we've seen as a freshman in the ACC a couple years ago when he was playing star for Clemson. They obviously ended up moving him to a more conventional safety role, but he can play that. That Jamarly Riddle could play that, or they could do Khalil Barnes at star, Jamarly Riddle at safety. They could do DeMello Jones at star, and then of course they could just leave Dinkins there. And Dinkins didn't have the best game against Ole Miss. He had a pretty bad game in coverage, all things considered. They went after him a lot, but he also was a freshman and a lot of room to grow, and they seem to really believe in him. So even at a position where, Georgia is losing its starter, the guy who's been their starter for 2 years now, 2 years, they have options on the team already that you can pencil in. And that's a lot more than you could say this time last year when Damon Wilson transferred. So I think that's an absolute win. And so far this portal season, they might not have gotten the offensive addition yet in like they got with Zachariah Branch last year, but Isaiah Canyon's a really good player who I think can really help them as an X and be something of a Colby Young replacement for them. So yeah, they've done well to address a lot of needs already, and I think they'll probably wind up adding maybe one more receiver, maybe another defensive lineman, maybe another DB. I don't think they're done either, but they've done a good job so far. I'm happy with what they've been doing.
For sure. And then Dante Dowdle too, the guy they just added today, 6'2", 227, former Nebraska and Kentucky guy. I think he's just going to come in, snag number 2, and he'll forget Josh McCray ever even happened for a year. I don't know. But yeah, so interesting for all that news to happen same day of Bowens, Frazier both coming back, and you're adding a guy with some production and not a huge year. Kentucky, I think 500 yards, 3 touchdowns or something. But yeah, it's something. It's another guy with SEC, ability.
Yeah, and I pulled up Dowdle's game log earlier, and he went for over 100 yards week 1 against the FCS school or an FCS adjacent school, and then he went for 100 yards against Florida on 5 carries because one of them was a 65-yarder, 70-yarder. So his production is a bit skewed for those 2 games, and he wasn't that productive. Against Georgia, he didn't even have 10 rushing yards, I don't think. But okay. I think that they clearly brought him in, as a guy in that McCray mold because he's what did you say? He's 220 pounds. He's a huge running back. And they just need, goal line specialist, short yardage specialist. I have, after watching McRae for a year, I kind of feel weird about that kind of player where if you put him in the game, it's just a dead ring, like a dead giveaway that it's going to be a run and everything, because we saw McRae get stuffed in some high leverage situations because of that, because it was so easy to just kind of telegraph what they were doing. But also McRae muscled his way over the goal line against Tennessee, and then he also picked up that 4th and 1 in the regular season against Ole Miss where he got like just stuffed. So if they can get a couple plays like that out of Dowdle, I really don't see how this can be like a bad move for Georgia, even though I wouldn't expect the most productive year. Like I had pretty high expectations for McRae last year, and I've learned my lesson with those kind of role player, big goal line backs to not expect much, especially when Chauncey Bowens and Nate Frazier are on the roster. So yeah, he should be a guy that helps out Georgia in certain situations, and hopefully he just gets he makes a couple plays for the Bulldogs like McRae did. Maybe he does even more. Who knows?
Yeah, and I think that's where fans like you and myself included are just maybe a little disconnected from Kirby Smart, because I think Kirby Smart's like, I'll go to the portal to make the 70th guy on the roster like an upgrade, like, whatever it is, the 3rd string running back role is stronger on our team, like that makes our team better. It's like a lot of these portal pieces over the years have just been for depth, where we see a guy, he's got, was it Jay Hayes from Notre Dame a few years back? Like, I don't think that guy played a snap. Like, I don't know that defensive lineman. Like, Georgia just, I don't know. They've signed some dudes out of the portal, and it seems like it's just sometimes they're an impact player, sometimes they're just the 4th or 5th spot of that position is now better because you got a guy with some experience. So we'll see. Maybe he turns out to be the best running back on Georgia's team next year, I guess. Time will tell,
Man.
but
maybe he wins the Heisman.
Yeah, who knows what the ceiling is for Dante Dowdell, but he will be a Georgia Bulldog next year. But anything else from you, sir?
Oh man. No, I think that's all I got this week. We'll see what happens in the rest of the transfer portal, man, because like I said, I definitely don't think Georgia's done adding guys, and we'll have to see what Ernest Green does, because that could really, now that would be, I was just talking about how there's no clear like red alert position weakness on the team right now. There's no Damon Wilson situation, but it might start to look that way if they lose Ernest Green to the draft as well. Georgia was really going to have a huge question mark at what I would say is probably one of the 3 or 4 most important positions in football, tackle. And so that is going to be something to monitor, and hopefully we find out in the coming days about that, because if indeed Ernest Green ends up leaving, Georgia is going to have to move quickly.
Yeah, that's a good call out for sure, because you return 3 stars on the offensive line, still great, but losing both offensive tackles, don't feel quite as good about that. Last thing, national championship game, sir. We're gonna come to the folks instead of Monday night. That's the national championship. We're gonna come Tuesday night next week. Who's your pick with the national championship? Indiana, Miami.
Man, I think after seeing that Indiana team in person and what they did to Oregon, I don't know if I can pick against them. I think I'm gonna have to go with the Hoosiers.
Sir, give me Carson Beck and the. No, I'm just joking.
Really?
I will not be bitter at all if Carson Beck. I'll be happy for Carson Beck if he wins a national championship. But like you said, I mean, this Indiana team looks like one of the best teams we've seen in years. I can't pick against Indiana right now. I'm not sure they'll hold them under 50 at this point.
Yeah, I don't know, man. They might not. They will. Their defense is really good. They're gonna. My national championship hot take is Indiana will not score 50 points.
Oh, you heard it here first. No, that's
but
fair.
Aside from that, I don't know.
And I was just talking about how Oregon could have been a little overrated. Like, who knows? But yeah, I think Miami will give them a game. I do like Indiana. Ole Miss is a way better national championship, or Indiana Miami is a way better national championship than Indiana Ole Miss. Miami is not a juggernaut, but they are at least a traditional college football power. I just feel like as Indiana, it would be a bummer as someone like Indiana facing Ole Miss. Like you don't want two Cinderella stories at the same time. You know, you gotta pick and choose. So it's like what the Cubs are facing the Indians in the World Series. It's like one team's winning their first World Series in like 60 years, or one's winning their first in like 100 years. Like, I don't know. You want a David versus Goliath. That's my. This is the best we could have done with the Final Four. So Miami out there representing the traditional college football brands. Indiana, we'll see. The upstart, Kurt Signetti, could make a lot of people's jobs a lot more difficult a week from now if he wins a national championship in Indiana in 2 years. That timetable on a lot of people, on Josh Heupel at Tennessee, I don't know, all kinds of people is going to get amped up a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Some people are going to be looking crazy for sure.
All right, man. Well, we appreciate everyone who's joined us, everyone who's watched live. Like, share, subscribe, and all that good stuff. And until next time, go Dogs.
Go Dogs.
College football is even more exciting when you've got some action on the line, and the games are even better when you're cashing in. And the Voice of College Football is the place to be to get the greatest value. Start with my picks. 75% against the money line, 58% against the spread, and I've got a 40-plus year track record. 11-0 in the college football playoff for me last year against the money line, 8-3 against the spread. And I'm just the warm-up act. Steve Merrill of Wager Talk is our ace in the hole, show stopper. 7 years with the Voice of College Football, over 30 years in the industry. Steve gives us analysis on all the big games, but you can't miss Steve's weekly under-the-radar pick. 28-12 against the spread the last 3 years. You also get picks from some of our top analysts here at the Voice of College Football, including Corey Bratta, Matt Zemek, and Steve Dace. Check out those numbers. Become a YouTube or Patreon member for just $99 per month. Go to the main channel on YouTube, click join, and then select a betting tier. Do the same thing on Patreon. Make 2025 a winner now.